The streets of Rome have once again become a stage of protest. Thousands of people, including students, workers, families, and activists, have marched under banners and flags in solidarity with Gaza, calling for Italy to stop exporting arms to Israel. The demonstrations reflect growing anger at the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip and frustration that political promises may not match action. It began with the global Sumud flotilla, the aid mission intercepted off the coast, and that event sparked outrage across Italy. Trade unions, civil society groups, and opposition parties saw the flotilla's seizure as a breaking point. On a recent day, a general strike organized by Italy's largest union, CGL, brought transport, schools, and public services to a standstill in more than 100 cities. In Rome alone, hundreds of thousands joined the march, packing central streets with chants of Free Palestine, Eid the blockade, and no more arms exports. Italy's right-wing government, led by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, has attempted to walk a difficult line. Publicly criticized both by domestic opposition and international actors, her administration has defended past decisions while expressing sympathy for humanitarian suffering. In Parliament, Meloni has said that after 7 October of last year, new export licenses for arms to Israel were suspended. However, critics argue that old contracts remain active, and some arms and munitions continue to be shipped under pre-existing agreements, even with oversight claims meant to limit misuse. Opposition leaders, including those from left-wing and center-left parties, have demanded a full arms embargo. The Democratic Party leader Elly Schlein, among others, has been vocal. Italy must cease shipments of weapons and munitions that could be used in Gaza. Many protesters point to Italy's own laws, especially Law 185 of 1990, which restricts exporting military equipment to countries engaged in conflicts where there is risk of human rights violations. They argue that Italy is violating both its own rules and international norms by continuing exports. The port workers have become key actors in this movement. In major ports, Genova, Livorno, Trieste, Venice, dock workers have blocked or delayed shipments, refused to load certain cargo, and raised demands that local authorities inspect arms shipments more closely. In one notable case, the Adriatic port of Ravenna refused entry to trucks believed to carry explosives destined for Israel. Local politicians backed the decision, citing ethical responsibility and public outcry. These actions have disrupted shipping, raised awareness, and pressured companies and government agencies to review their export practices. Protesters also focus on the economic and symbolic weight of these strikes. The general strike halted schools, transportation, and other services. Italy's unions say ordinary people are paying attention now, not just activists, but those who may feel disruptions in their daily lives. The scale of public participation demonstrates that solidarity with Gaza is becoming a mainstream concern in Italian society. Families, older citizens, and communities with no previous history of activism are joining. Human rights organizations have added detailed data reports of civilian casualties, lack of access to water, medicine, electricity in Gaza, damage to hospitals and schools. These reports feed into the narrative that arms supplied, even indirectly, fuel suffering. Italy's international reputation is under scrutiny. Allies and global institutions are watching whether Italy will match its rhetoric with policy changes. Meloni's government has claimed that recent arms transfers post-7 October have been carefully reviewed or blocked. But transparency issues persist. Independent journalists and NGOs allege that some exports under classification as dual use or defense components are allowed to proceed under less oversight. There is concern that some supply lines use commercial ports or logistic networks that obscure their military end use. Italy's parliament has seen intense debate. Some conservative members defend the exports on the basis of alliance trade and Italy's defense industry. They argue that stopping all arms exports would damage Italy's economy, violate existing contracts, and harm its position in NATO and EU defense cooperation. Others argue that morality, law, and public opinion demand the shift, halting arms exports is the only way Italy can truly stand in solidarity with Gaza. The movement has international linkage. Protesters note that many other countries are taking similar stands: Spain, France, Germany, and they call for a coordinated European arms embargo. Italian protesters often carry signs aimed at EU institutions and demand that Italian foreign policy align with human rights obligations. There is growing talk about legal challenges in domestic courts, as well as calls for investigations into arms export approvals under old licenses. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsens each day. Aid groups report thousands of civilians displaced. Hospitals lack power. Doctors lack critical supplies. Clean water is scarce. Deaths from both conflict and preventable diseases are rising. Protesters in Rome cite these conditions constantly. They ask, how can Italy provide arms, even indirectly, when lives are being lost in such conditions? On the political front, Meloni's government is facing a dilemma. It risks alienating centrist or moderate voters who sympathize with Gaza, while also trying to maintain its alliances with Israel and with NATO partners. Internal political stability, international image, and economic concerns all weigh heavily. Any move toward a full embargo or cancellation of older contracts will be met with legal and logistical obstacles, existing export licenses, legal obligations to contractors, and pressures from defense industry stakeholders. Looking ahead, several things could happen. One possibility is that Italy strengthens its suspension of arms exports, expands oversight, and begins canceling or renegotiating old contracts. Another is that courts or domestic and EU legal bodies force more disclosure or transparency, possibly ruling some past exports invalid. Italy might also join broader European efforts for embargoes, sanctions, or measures that limit arms transit through Italian ports. Alternatively, the government might try to deflect, offering more humanitarian aid, expressing regret, or conditional pauses without enacting full policy change. Given the scale of demonstrations, the political risk of inaction is large, but so is the cost to entrenched industries and political alliances. For now, thousands in Rome and across Italy continue to march. Their demands are clear: end arms exports, stop complicity, align policy with morality and law. But until action is taken in port authorities, parliament, and ministries, protest remains one of the few levers available. The question Italian leaders must answer is this: will they heed the voices of the people and reshape policy, or let protest fade while business, arms contracts, continues as before? One voice on the ground sums up the mood. We want a hope, but we fear that nothing changes unless we force it. In this movement, as in many before, hope depends on momentum, and momentum depends on conviction, transparency, and courage.